Good morning, my dear students. Today, in history, we are going to continue the same chapter, that is Socialism in Europe and Russian Revolution. Children, today we are going to start. Good morning, my dear students. Today, in history, we are going to continue the same chapter, that is Socialism in Europe and Russian Revolution. Children, today we will study about the effects of February Revolution in Petrograd and the Revolution of October 1917. Now, before we start the effects of February Revolution, let's quickly recall about the February Revolution in Petrograd. Children, you know the workers from 50 factories on the right bank of River Neva called a strike. The government called in the troops and suspended the Duma. The striking workers and the soldiers formed the Petrograd Soviet, and the Tsar Nicholas was forced to abdicate, and the February Revolution saw the fall of monarchy. Now, let's start with the effects of February Revolution. Children, now you know that after the February Revolution, the monarchy was abolished and provisional government was formed. In the provisional government, army officials, landowners, and industrialists played an important role, but liberal and the socialist worked for an elected government. Restrictions on public meeting and associations were removed. Soviet, like the Petrograd Soviet, were set up everywhere. Now, children, what is the meaning of Soviet? Soviet means political organization and the government bodies of Russia, which was primarily associated with the Russian Revolution, and the Petrograd Soviet was a council of workers and soldiers that played a key role in the success of Russian Revolution of 1917. The Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia from his exile in April 1917. Children, you have to learn this date. When did he return back to Russia? In April 1917. Lenin and the Bolshevik had opposed the war since 1914. He felt that it was a time for the Soviets to take over the power. Lenin gave his April thesis and made 3 demands. Children, you have to learn this also, the April thesis and the demands which he had proposed. Now, the first one is the war to be brought to a close. The First World War is to be brought to a close. Then the second one, the land to be transferred to the peasants. And the third, the bank to be nationalized. The bank should be nationalized. Lenin argued that the Bolshevik party rename itself the Communist Party to indicate its new radical aims. But children, others in the Bolshevik party did not think it was a right time for the socialist revolution. Through the summers, the workers' movement spread. In industrial areas, factory committees were formed which began questioning the way industrialists ran their factories. Trade unions grew in number. Soldiers' committees were formed in the army. In June, about 500 Soviets sent representatives to an All-Russia Congress of Soviets. The power of the provisional government reduced and the Bolshevik influence grew. Provisional government decided to take control of the spreading discontent. It resisted attempts by workers to run factories and began arresting leaders. Popular demonstration staged by the Bolshevik in July 1917 was sternly repressed. In the countryside, peasants and their Soviet revolutionary leaders pressed for the redistribution of land. Land committees were formed. Peasants seized land between July and September 1917. Now, children, once again, I am repeating the effects of the February Revolution in Russia. The first and the most important effect was the Tsar abdicated and the monarchy was brought down. Restrictions on public meetings and associations were removed. Soviets were set up everywhere. The Soviet leaders and the Duma leaders formed a provisional government to run the country. Russia's future would be decided by a constituent assembly elected on the basis of universal adult suffrage. Now, children, after February Revolution, now let's start with the Revolution of October 1917. Children, as the conflict between the provisional government and the Bolshevik grew, Lenin feared the provisional government would set up a dictatorship. In September, he began discussions for an uprising against the government. Bolshevik supporters in the army, Soviets, and the factories were brought together. Bolshevik supporters in the army, Soviet, and the factories were united. Lenin persuaded the Petrograd Soviet and the Bolshevik Party to agree to a Soviet seizure of power on 16th October 1917. The Soviet appointed a military revolutionary committee under the leadership of Trotsky to organize the seizure. The uprising began on 24th October. Children, remember the date. The uprising began on 24th October. Prime Minister Kerensky had left the city. Pro-government troops seized the building of the two Bolshevik newspapers and were sent to take over telephone and telegraph offices and protect the Winter Palace. On the other hand, the Military Revolutionary Committee ordered its supporters to seize government offices and arrest ministers. The ship Aurora shelled the Winter Palace. Other vessels sailed down Neva and took over different military points. Bolshevik actions was approved by the All-Russian Congress of Soviets. There was a heavy fighting between pro-government troops and the Bolsheviks. By December 1917, the Bolsheviks controlled the Moscow-Petrograd area. Children, once again, I am repeating the Revolution of October 1917. Listen it very carefully. Children, as you know, after the Revolution of February 1917, the monarchy was abolished and the provisional government was set up. As the conflict between the provisional government and the Bolshevik grew, Lenin feared the provisional government would set up a dictatorship. On 16th October 1917, Lenin persuaded the Petrograd Soviet and the Bolshevik Party the Bolshevik Party agreed to seize the power. A military revolutionary committee was appointed under the leadership of Trotsky. The uprising began on October 24 when pro-government troops were sent to take over the telephone and telegraph office and protect the Winter Palace. In a swift response, the Military Revolutionary Committee ordered its supporters to seize the government offices and arrest the ministers. Then the city was under the committee's control and the ministers had surrendered. Uprisings took place in the other cities also. By December, the Bolsheviks controlled the Moscow-Petrograd areas. That's all for today. Thank you and have a nice day.